just wanted to show you how we made the batter for our leopard print cupcakes, because the method is the really important bit. You'll need 4 eggs, 250 grams of plain all-purpose flour, 250 grams of caster sugar, that's superfine sugar, 250 grams of unsalted butter, 2 tablespoons of whole milk at room temperature, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence. Firstly, cream the butter and sugar in a mixer if possible for a long time, at least 5 minutes. This bit is really important because it's the process that puts the air into your batter. And as we've used plain flour, not self-raising, this step is crucial. If you don't have access to a good mixer, then you might want to try the Madeira recipe that you'll find on my Facebook page. That works really well too. Keep an eye on the colour of your butter. It must go from yellow to a much paler cream colour. It's at this point that we've added some pink food colouring for our base colour. At this stage, add vanilla extract. Once it's creamed, add the eggs one at a time, and with each egg, add a heaped tablespoon of flour. Mix them in on a medium setting just enough to incorporate them. We don't want to lose our air now. The small amount of flour that you add with each egg should stop the batter from curdling. Now, the rest of our flour and the milk must be folded in, not mixed. We're being really careful not to lose the air from our batter. Use a plastic spatula if you have one. Now, when it's all incorporated, you're good to go.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Cakes by Sharon. Today I'm going to show you how to make my delicious chocolate and cinnamon spiced cake. For this recipe you'll need 1 cup of milk, 1 cup of firmly packed brown sugar, 2 eggs, 250 grams of plain flour, 100 grams of white cooking chocolate, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, a teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/4 teaspoon each of cinnamon, nutmeg and allspice. I've got 250 grams of butter, got some buttercream frosting which I've already prepared, I've got some store-bought caramel sauce, a wooden skewer, spatula, a whisk, I've got my cooling rack, a bowl, my sieve, as well as a 6-inch pan which I've lined with some non-stick baking paper. This recipe is super easy because it's all done in the one pan. So the first thing I need to do is melt my butter on a low heat. Once the batter's melted, I'm going to pour in my milk and give it a little stir to combine. To this I'm going to add my vanilla extract, followed by my white chocolate. Once the white chocolate has melted fully, I'm going to add the brown sugar. Once the brown sugar has fully dissolved, the liquid turns into a nice light brown caramel colour. Now I need to leave this on the stove to cool down a little bit. For this recipe, the flour needs to be sifted, and the best way to combine all of the spices and the baking soda is to sift them all together. It's back to my pan again, and I'm going to slowly incorporate the dry ingredients into the wet mixture. I'm going to add the flour a little bit at a time, whisking gently after each addition just to remove any lumps, but careful not to over whisk it. And finally I'm going to add my 2 eggs which I've whisked in another separate bowl. You can see that once all the ingredients are mixed together, the mixture has a nice thick consistency and is not too runny. I'm just going to transfer my mixture into my baking tin. And I'm just going to go about 3/4 of the way up of the tin. You could fill it all the way up if you liked, but I'm going to reserve just the tiniest little amount to sneak in 2 little cupcakes. I'm going to keep my patty pans and my cake tin on a baking tray and pop them into my preheated oven. The cupcakes will take approximately 20 to 25 minutes and the cake will take roughly about 60 minutes. Before taking the cake out, I'm going to make sure it's fully cooked all the way through by inserting the skewer and making sure it comes out dry. It's important to leave this cake out on a bench to cool completely before tipping it out onto a wire rack. It's then ready to be frosted, which I'm going to do with my buttercream frosting that I've already prepared, and top it with a delicious swirl of caramel sauce. Once you've made these cakes, they're certainly not going to last long. The whole house smells absolutely delicious, they're super moist, and it's going to be hard to stop it just... Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Cakes by Sharon. If you're new to my channel, welcome, and thanks for tuning in. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you click on the subscribe button so you can see all my creative cakes as I release them. A very common question I get asked from many of you guys is what cakes I use to create my character cakes as well as my 3D double-sided cakes, like the ones you can see on screen now. Well, to be honest, there are a few different types of cakes I use, and today I'm going to show you a recipe I use to make my super moist and chocolatey chocolate cake. So the ingredients I'll be using today is 1.5 cups of milk, 1 cup of superfine or caster sugar, 150 grams of dark cooking chocolate, 250 grams of butter, 250 grams of sifted plain flour, 1 teaspoon of bicarb of soda, 1/3 cup of cocoa powder, and 2 eggs. The equipment we'll need is a 4-litre pan, an 8-inch round cake tin that I've lined with some greaseproof paper, a sieve, a whisk, and a spatula. So let's get started. I've got my stove on a medium heat, and the first ingredient I'm adding to the pan is the butter. Don't worry about having your butter at room temperature. Since it needs to be melted, you can use it straight from the fridge, which is one of the terrific things about this recipe. So I'm just going to gently melt all of this butter, and now I'm going to add the milk. All I want to do here is bring the milk to the same temperature as the butter. Once the butter and the milk has combined nicely and the heat of the milk has increased, I'm going to pour in my sugar and make sure it's completely dissolved. As you move the whisk around in the pan, you'll be able to feel if the granules of sugar have melted or not. Now I'm going to add my dark chocolate and stir until all the chocolate buds have completely melted. You can check this by looking at your whisk. If it still has lumps of chocolate stuck to it when you lift it out of the mixture, it still has a little bit more melting to do. Make sure you continue to gently stir the mixture. Even though it's on a gentle heat, you still don't want to leave it unattended and run the risk of burning the chocolate. Finally, I'm going to add my cocoa powder and whisk it through the mixture until all of the lumps have disappeared. At this point, you'll end up with a gorgeous dark brown looking liquid, which is truly delicious as it is on its own. Now I'm going to leave the mixture on the stovetop to cool to room temperature. The beauty about this recipe is that you only need to use this one pan to prepare the entire cake batter. So now I'm going to add my flour and bicarb of soda, which has been sifted already. I'll add this in 2 batches, whisking gently to fully incorporate the flour and eliminate any lumps. And finally, I'm going to add my 2 eggs, which I've lightly beaten separately in this bowl, and mix it all together. As you can see, even though the flour and eggs have thickened up the mixture slightly, it's still very runny, but don't worry, this is exactly how it's meant to be. All I need to do now is transfer this mixture into my prepared cake tin and pop it into my oven, which has been preheated to 160 degrees Celsius or 320 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 90 minutes. The exact timing may vary depending on each individual oven, but 90 minutes is approximately the time the cake will need to cook. Before removing the cake from the oven, insert a wooden skewer into the centre, and if it comes out nice and clean without any cake residue on it, you'll know it's fully cooked. It's very important that you now leave this cake in the cake tin to completely cool. If you try to invert it now, it will fall apart. So now my cake is completely cooled, and I'm just going to turn it out onto a wire rack and remove my greaseproof paper. Once you try this recipe at home, you'll also discover exactly just how moist, delicious and irresistible this cake is. I've had many other people try this recipe out and tell me just how much their family and friends were impressed with how delicious the cake was. This cake is great to use as a base for my other tutorials, and an important tip is to allow the cake to chill in the refrigerator fully before you start carving in any project.